Hi guys, welcome to Safe Diving. So in today's video I'm going to be taking a closer look at my Twinset. So when I first started diving and then I started sort of branching out, I kind of saw Twinsets around and I always thought they were cool. When I was a kid I always swore that I'd dive with 2 cylinders instead of 1 because why would you only dive with 1? If you can have 2 then you got twice as much, and that kind of childish logic still kind of fits with modern day technical diving. A bit of redundancy goes a long way. So diving with 2 cylinders gives you plenty of redundancy. I just have so much gas on my back, and yeah, I just find they're a lot safer. But trying to get into it, they were a little bit confusing and I couldn't really find any information about it at the time. So I thought I'd make this this video if you're thinking about sort of moving on to twins. Basically, this is how you assemble them onto like a BCD and a harness. Yeah, I just thought it would make your life a little bit easier. Maybe you'll understand twins a little bit more, and then yeah, you might sort of think about moving into diving into twins if you had a closer look at someone's set. So yeah, let's take a closer look at my Twinset. Okay, so the obvious thing, or the obvious first thing, is the tanks themselves. So these are a pair of steel 12-litre 232 bar cylinders, and yeah, these are my twins. So I went for twin 12s because they just kind of feel right for me. You can twin anything up really. I used to dive on twin 7 litres, which are about the same height, but they're a lot skinnier, they're a lot lighter as well, but they were 300 bar 7s, so that I could get pretty much the same volume of gas. It's a little bit different. But what I found is that the 7s, they were nice because they were nice and small, they were pretty easy to pick up. When you sat down on like the rib of a boat, the bottom of the cylinders touch the bottom as well, so you haven't got the weights sort of actually on your shoulders. You can take that weight off. But trying to get a true 300 bar airfill is quite tricky. Even if I did it myself, by the time that you hit the water, you're scraping about 260 bar. So I didn't really see that added benefit. So I opted for twin 12s. That way, if I'm diving with someone on just a single 12, I know I have twice as much gas as them. They're a decent length. Again, like with the 7s, they kind of rest. So if I do need to take the weight off my shoulders out of the water, I can literally sit down and they'll be sort of taking that weight off my shoulders. And yeah, just plenty of gas for long dives. So breaking this down, the tanks themselves, these are exactly the same as single tanks. The only thing that differs is the valves at the top and these 2 bands. So starting up at the top, the valves that are put in, they're pretty much the same as your standard tank valve. The only thing that changes is that these are mirror images of one another. You have a left and a right-handed valve, and they're connected in the middle by what we call a manifold. So that means that I can switch either of these tanks on, and that will deliver gas to my regulators. But then when this valve is open, it means that I'm breathing from both tanks together. So as I go down, the pressure sort of drops in both of them. But in an emergency, if something goes wrong with one of them, I can close that valve. This one's actually open all the way, which is unusual. I can close that valve and then just breathe from one side. So that way I can switch that off. I can still be breathing from that, so I have an independent air source. Doesn't mean that you need 2 separate first stages, but that's a good thing. Again, you've got more redundancy. But yeah, having a manifolded Twinset just means that you don't have to switch between the 2 constantly. You're actually breathing from both of them together. And if you need to, you can isolate it in an emergency. Now, the twinning bands, so these go as high up as they can on the shoulder. The first one goes quite high. And then what these basically do is they hold these 2 cylinders parallel so they don't twist. because these are very, very heavy, if one of them moves and the other one doesn't, you're going to damage these threads, and these are very, very important to keep nice and safe. If they bend, there's going to be a very loud noise and a very expensive bill, let's put it that way. So you have these twinning bands, and these are bolted on. These hold them very, very securely and stop them from moving around, so they move as one unit. They also act as a way of attaching your tanks onto your backplate and harness, so that it's really, really rigid, and you don't need like cam bands to attach them onto them. Now the second one is lower down, and this one is always 11 inches away from the top one. And that basically comes from the back plates, the way that we've sort of designed back plates throughout the years. The story that I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm running with it, is that back plates used to be made out of old road signs, and they were 13 inches long, and then they just went, hey, why don't we make it 1 inch in from each end? And that's kind of the universal size that we'll go with. So yeah, every tank band is fitted about 11 inches apart from one another. I don't know if that's true, that's the story that I've heard, that's the one that I tell my students. So yeah, so that's it. Other than that, I don't have boots on my tanks, that's just extra clutter, and it means that it's covering up the bottom so that I can't see any sort of rust or damage. When they're exposed, yes, they do get scuffed up, but at least I can see it, and if it looks dangerous, then I can sort of take care of it. Whereas with a boot, it just holds water against the bottom of it, and yeah, sort of rust can get underneath the enamel paint, and yeah, it's not a good thing. But yeah, so those are my cylinders. Let's start building up my complete twin set with my BCD and everything. Next up, I have my P weight. So this is a little extra trim weight. This weighs about 5 kilograms, because despite how heavy these are like 20-something kilos each, I still need some lead to actually help me get down with my dry suit and my undersuit. So an extra 5 kilos of lead sort of helps me. And this is basically a big block of lead. It's coated, so it means that lead isn't leaching out into the water. That's quite bad for the environment, so always try to get sort of coated lead if you can. And the way it's shaped a bit like a wedge, so it just sits in here and fits in between my tanks. So it sits in there, and you can see we got these rails, and these are sort of holding, or the bolts are holding that weight in the position, and yeah, it's out of the way. It's nice and close to my body as well. The further away you put that lead, the more it wants to kind of twist you around. But with it sort of like this, it's nice and close, it's nice and trim, and yeah, it's just some wasted space. So yeah, why not fit some lead there? My wing goes on next. This is the buoyancy part of my backplate and harness system. This is a Mars XR. I can't remember what they call it, but it's a 20 pound, or is it 20 kilo, 44 pound wing. So plenty of lift. The way you can tell this is for twin sets is that it's nice and wide. We've got a wide section in the middle and then the lobes around. I dive with a donut shaped wing. You can get sort of horseshoe sized ones or shaped ones which have a cutout in the middle, but they're a bit old fashioned nowadays. Donuts sort of allow plenty of sort of air movement all the way around, and I basically went for this one mainly for the sort of external and internal properties. Basically on the outside you have this external shell, and this is protecting the bladder on the inside from abrasions, but on the inside as well, the bladder itself is pretty tough. So yeah, I think I ended up sort of going for this one, but there are plenty of good ones. I've actually got my eye on a new wing as we speak. I just got to wait for it to be released. But yeah, this one's fine. It definitely does the job. And you'll notice down the centre we have these sort of grommet holes, and these are, funnily enough, 11 inches apart from one another. So so they're going to line up with the bolts underneath. So so yeah, when you're building this sort of on the dive site, tank first, and then that P weight, and then you line up these these grommets onto the bolt holes, and that's basically it. Now all we need to do is put our back plate on top of that, screw that all down, clamp it together, and you're ready to rock and roll. So yeah, that's my bladder. Let's take a look at my back plate and harness. Okay, and then you fit my back plate on. So my back plate is a stainless steel back plate. This is about 3 mil thick. So steel is great because it's strong and it adds a little bit of weight. As you can see, this one is actually a skeletonized one, so it's a little bit lighter, but if you need sort of extra trim weight, that's somewhere where you can add some weight to your BCD. I've already lined it up on the two bolt holes, so these are 11 inches apart again. And to fix it all together, a pair of wing nuts, and they just kind of screw on. Now, the first time I saw wing nuts on a back plate, I thought, how does that not just dig into your back and sort of be really uncomfortable? But trust me, they don't. One thing is that a lot of this, you can use this as buoyancy, obviously, so that's kind of lifting you up, so that kind of hangs you away from it. And two, you've got your dry suit, you've got your undersuit and everything underneath it, that's extra padding so it never reaches you. And three, it sits in a real sort of divot, so it's quite hard for your back to actually reach that at all. You've got a good sort of ½ inch of depth just in that sort of spinal section there, so you're fine, they don't touch. So on my back plate, plenty of attachment points if I want to sort of attach any loops on that. If I, for whatever reason, some divers, they like to attach some sort of bungees there for a DSMB so they can stow it away. You can also attach sort of cam bands on the other side if you want to dive with a small sort of dry suit tank. You can just have a small like 1 litre pony just sort of in there. It's out of the way, but that's an independent air source, so you don't have to waste your actual breathing gas on inflating your dry suit. So that's what these kind of holes around there are for. My harness is just a single piece of 2-inch webbing. So this is DIR style. It kind of starts as a waistband, comes around, becomes my shoulder straps, goes underneath through the back plate, becomes my other shoulder strap, and then comes the rest of my sort of waistband. Very strong, very reliable. The downside is that it's very inflexible. There's no sort of adjustment in that strap. So what I did is I fitted an A-gear Harper loop. So this is a very simple little device that just kind of slots through your back plate, and then you thread your left, or you can sort of get two, so you can thread both of your shoulder straps through that. And then that way, what you can do is at the beginning of the dive, you can really lengthen it off, get into it, and then when you're doing yourself up, you pull that down, and that sort of tightens that strap, and then the waistband becomes the right length. So that's a way of not breaking the loop, but making it a little bit adjustable. I've got some neoprene sleeves over the top. That just helps prevent that from rubbing my dry suit and damaging that. Over my shoulders, pre-bent D-rings so I can clip things off onto that. Underneath that, I've got a whole bunch of these sort of inner tube sections, and that's for your torches or any accessory that you're not going to be using but you take down with you. Stops it from flapping around. This loop is for my inflator, so that would go through there next. That just stops that from drifting away, so I always know exactly where it is over my shoulder. Pretty much exactly the same on my right hand shoulder. This is my sort of primary D-ring that I clip things off onto. I've got another section of that sort of bungee, just in case I need to tidy something up. Down to the waistbands, again, very reminiscent of a waist belt, a weight belt. Quick release. But what I have done is I modified the end of that, just to make it a little bit easier for myself. A completely flat edge is kind of tricky to sort of thread through sometimes. So I just cut that corner off, melted it down, made sure it's sort of nice and neat, so that doesn't fray, and that's much easier to sort of get through, even with gloved hands. Now I don't have a D-ring on my sort of right hand side. on my waist, but I do on my left. So this is for my my SPG, my pressure gauge. Just a big straight sort of D-ring off on that, and then I can clip whatever I want from stages off onto that. Crotch strap, very essential, sort of holds you in position, stops it from sort of riding up and sort of going anywhere. Much softer material because it's going between your legs. Got a D-ring on the front, that's for a DPV. If I'm not using it, I tend to tuck it away. And then just above my butt, I have this other one, which is a pre-bent D-ring, just to clip things off onto. That's handy for spools, just to keep them out of the way. But that's it. That's basically how you build up the different layers of a sort of backplate and harness. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my side mount regulators, not my side mount, my Twinset regulators, and show you the configuration and sort of what hose goes where on my regulators when I'm diving Twinsets. Okay, so I've rigged my regulators up, so this is pretty much ready to dive. Now, yeah, so I've got two separate first stages. These are Apex DST first stages. The main reason why I went for these is that they come in a 5-port, so that way I get this hose coming out of each of them, and having this kind of crisscross just makes it a bit more practical. Means that I don't have hoses coming out at kind of weird jaunty angles. Now I angle them both inwards, so that basically if I'm in an overhead environment, anything that's going to sort of hit is not going to be a hose, it's going to be something solid, so it's less likely to sort of rupture or damage a hose. And this gives me quite a nice kind of setup. So if I start with my left-hand post, so the one that sits just behind my left-hand shoulder, so I have 3 hoses coming out of it. I have my high pressure SPG hose for my pressure gauge. That leads down and clips off onto my left-hand hip, and that's onto a brass gauge with a large-eyed bolt snap on that. And then just below that, low pressure hose, that leads down to my dry suit hose, nice and long. So that's going to go underneath my arm, underneath my left arm, and then up into my chest. And that's just a quick disconnect, sort of standard LPI hose that fits to my dry suit. Because if I'm in my twins, then I'm always in my dry suit. My primary second stage comes off of this post, off this 5th port, and what this hose basically does is it runs across the tank, it then runs down my sort of right hand flank. It's then this hose, and it keeps on going. What this will do is it'll loop underneath my my dive knife, and that's kind of in front of me on my waist. It then sort of hooks under that so it doesn't flap around. It then loops up, and then it goes up around my neck. If I just demonstrate quickly, and then that goes in my mouth. So this is my primary, the one that I'm breathing from. As you can see, this has a 90-degree bend in it, so that just means that that hose is nice and neat. It sort of tucks away from me really quickly. I do have a small single end bolt snap on that in case I need to swap stages, and that just means that I can click it off and I know exactly where it is. And this is an XTX 50. I prefer the 50 over the others, mainly for the style. But it's nice and light, but it still has all the functionality of sort of most of the other second stages. But yeah, tough as nails. These come with me everywhere. So that's my primary. So if I need to donate that, I always give an opportunity to shout out to Long Hose Primary Donate. Basically, I'm breathing from this one. If my buddy has a problem, they signal to me there's something wrong and they need to breathe from whatever, I can take a nice deep breath from this one, because I know this is working. This is the one that I'm breathing from. I take it out, I then bow my head quickly, and then they have all of that length. If that little kink goes away, they have all of that room to go play with and sort themselves out, so we don't have to be too close to be able to sort of breathe. And then around my neck I have my alternate, and this sits on my right hand post just behind my right hand shoulder. This just goes over my right hand shoulder. Short little hose, doesn't have to be long. The only person that's going to be breathing from this is me, and this sits on a necklace around my neck. So I've just donated, I know exactly where my other second stage is. Boom, that goes straight in. I try a breath from that. If that doesn't work, then I take this one back. So that way we're both working from a working second stage. This one is always close to hand. I know exactly where that is. That can't go too far. And yeah, basically because it's on such a short hose and it's on a bungee necklace, yeah, so that's an independent air source. Also coming off of my my right hand, I have a low pressure inflator hose that goes down to the inflator on my BCD. This one's a little bit short. I want something that's about an inch or maybe two longer, but this one's in such great condition, I'm kind of reluctant to buy another hose just for the sake of 2 inches. And then I do have a wireless air transmitter coming off of this one as well, because I do like to use air integration on my Shearwater Perdix. It's an Aqualung transmitter. They do work with Shearwater computers, and that just sits on a 6-inch high pressure hose, and that just tucks away nice and neatly. So it's not going to get bashed around, it's not going to get damaged, and the fact that it's on a hose just means that there's a bit of flexibility so it can move if it does sort of get bashed. But that way I have a buoyancy control on both first stages. I have something to breathe from on on both first stages, and I actually do have a pressure gauge on both, which I never really thought of, because I only keep one sort of analog gauge, and then my transmitter, that's relatively new for me, because on twins you're breathing from both of them together, so there's no reason to have a second analog gauge, one for each, because the only time you're going to need it is in an emergency or where you've had to sort of shut it down. But if you've already shut that down, it doesn't really matter how much gas is in that tank. You kind of know what it was when you switched it off. You know how much gas you have left in your one remaining tank. So either way, you're going to be ending the dive, so you don't sort of need to know. But now I have that sort of independent sort of pressure gauge thinking about it. So that is my my Twinset. This is what I dive sort of in the UK mostly. Yeah, it's my Twinset. It's got plenty of gas in it. It's tough as nails. This goes with me sort of on all my sort of local dives, because I'd rather have too much gas than not enough. Yeah, I dive on single cylinders when I'm abroad, but sort of when I'm at home and I can sort of deal with sort of carrying these tanks around, then yeah, I'd rather dive twins than dive on a single. Okay guys, so this is my Twinset. Of course, let me know down in the comments below if you're just thinking about moving on to twins. If you've got any questions at all, just pop them down and I'll make sure that I answer them, either by sort of writing to you, or actually, if there are enough questions about Twinsets, I'll do a completely separate sort of Q&A style video, just answering your questions and trying to sort of put you at ease on whether you're thinking about moving on to twins. But yeah, let me know. Do you dive singles or do you dive twins? Are you thinking more about side mount? I have dive side mount, but for sort of local diving, I prefer twins. I just like how sort of solid they are, and in cold water, dealing with all those little bolt snaps can be a bit of a sort of kerfuffle, a bit of a pain. So so I just tend to dive my twins. I know exactly sort of how they work and how they sit. But yeah, let me know down in the comments below what you're thinking about moving on to, whether this helped you out with your decision on whether to sort of move to twins, or whether this just seems too much for you. You just want to stick with singles. Pop it down in the comments below, and we'll have a good old discussion. As ever, if you want me to record anything else, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe as well, because that's really going to help me out. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're staying safe during this lockdown and keeping your family nice, fit and healthy. Make sure to look after your heart, because that's one of the main reasons for diver incidents during recent years. So this lockdown isn't going to be doing us any good. So yeah, make sure you're looking after yourself. Don't forget to check out all of my other videos. Thank you for watching, and of course, safe diving.